What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 110 of Convos on the Pedicab. We're here with my buddy Cole Bolton. He owns K&C Cattle. It is a regenerative farming facility in Southeast Austin, right next to the airport. Super excited to have you on. We're probably going to be having some food shortages at some point coming up, so it's kind of good to understand where our food comes from, understand our food systems. Just want to have as many tools in the toolbox to actually prepare for the upcoming Joe Biden food shortages. But before we get started, this episode is sponsored by PlebLab. PlebLab is an Austin, Texas company that allows individuals and small businesses to utilize and purchase and accept Bitcoin payments as part of their financial platform. There's no better way to protect yourself from inflation and currency debasement than by holding on to sound money with a fixed supply. And there's no better way to protect your purchasing power, financial freedom, and personal autonomy than owning permissionless money that cannot be confiscated. So go check out PlebLab if you want to get onboarded onto Bitcoin, if you want to learn how to accept Bitcoin for payments, if you want to learn how to operate your own node, send, receive payments, the whole works. Go check out PlebLab, guys. Anyway, Cole, thank you so much for coming, man. I'm so happy to see you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It has been miserably hot, miserably dry in Texas, so we've had our own set of challenges this summer, but it's always a pleasure to get down here on the east side and get to hang out with you today.
Yes, it's not too far, right?
No, it's about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Not far at all.
Yeah, not too far. We were going to do it yesterday, but there was a little gas leak. There's some technical difficulties, and then some technical difficulties today. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're making this happen.
No, thanks. We did not anticipate having a gas leak. It actually wasn't in the facility. They were bringing gas from a flow line into our facility because they were supposed to do it about 90 days ago. And long story short, we ended up finding a hole, but we got it fixed.
And you got it fixed. It's good. Were you always a farmer?
I grew up in the ranching industry. My third, fourth generation. I just happened to have a passion for it and never wanted to stop.
Well, that's good. Okay, so I've learned a lot of stuff about the food industry, none of which is good.
Sure.
But I've been hearing this term pop up. I mentioned it right off the bat in the beginning of this podcast, regenerative farming. What is that?
So the practice of regenerative farming is to utilize, your animal species to turn around and self-fertilize your pastures and help create an ecosystem that not only is healthy but doesn't require chemicals and man-made fertilizers. We actually use the soil to utilize its best possible qualities.
Can you explain how that happens?
Yep. So what we do, we raise either native grasses, or there are certain grasses in which we intentionally plant, and we graze them rotationally on a high intensity program. So I may put cattle in a small area for a very, very short period of time, meaning hours, rotate them to the next paddock so that you're constantly giving your grass time to regenerate and to deepen and strengthen the root system, all while self-fertilizing with the manure from the cattle. And then, God willing, we get some rain. And it's just a full stream process that creates an ecosystem that's healthier and now gets all the chemicals and hormones and shit out of your system.
It seems really simple.
Very.
So how come other farmers don't do that?
Because there are some challenges growing cattle to scale and getting the numbers. Most cattle nowadays are put into feed yards, given mass production grain rations. It's cheaper, it's lower cost, and they take up less space. For instance, in Austin, it's a real challenge because we have developers buying up all the properties and building apartments and high rises. So it gets really challenging acreage wise and cost to make it all work. But we've been able to really steer our program home, and instead of fighting the development, I just work with them.
How do you do that?
So what I do is I reach out to some of these developers. Is they buy a tract of land that's 200 acres. They're getting ready to plat permit. Well, we all know the city of Austin's extremely fast at approving anything that has to do with permitting. Usually, 1 to 2 years. So I'll reach out to the developers and say, hey, guys, y'all want to keep your tax exemption for agriculture use. Let me come in and either plant hay and bale hay, or I'll turn cattle out if they have fences, and It helps them. It helps me. The only downfall, I'm constantly having to move cattle, but it's kind of a win-win.
That seems how do you move the cattle? Because at the risk of sounding stupid,
Understood.
cows are pretty big animals.
They are. I actually, if any of your followers watch Yellowstone, we kind of do it the old-fashioned way. I have four-wheelers, horses. We pin them into a set of corrals, and then we haul them by trailer to the next location and constantly move. At some of our places, we use a hot wire system to where we can keep them in a set paddock. Then you rotate them, and you move the hot wires constantly.
Okay. So what you're doing is actually pretty smart because you own a tract of land. Right. And the developer isn't going to use eminent domain or do anything to take your tract of land, right? That's a mess.
Right.
But because you own a small tract of land, they can develop on the neighboring tract of land, which could impact where the cows roam and how they move. And there's still going to be soil on a tract of land that, you're not using.
Absolutely.
Right. And so when they buy this land, you going up to them and telling them how they can get a tax exemption, which is offering them value. You're also, in doing that, you're giving your cows a space within their land where they're not going to build any houses or property to graze and continue fertilizing the soil. So you get to farm the land in a really healthy and sustainable manner. The cows develop really well. People eat better food.
Absolutely.
The soil grows better. And you build more housing to get rid of the unaffordability problem. It just seems like a really multifaceted way to kind of win out in this situation.
Well, I hadn't looked at it, I guess, that detailed, but yeah, that's exactly what we try to do.
That's pretty cool.
Well, it has its challenges in an urban area. In more of the rural areas, it's a lot easier because you have more land, more space available. But in Austin, it does get pretty complex. We have, 20, 30 different leases in order to make all of this happen.
So you don't own the land, you're leasing the land?
I own some acreage, yes, but from just a cost standpoint, there's no way I could afford to own enough land to run the amount of cattle we do, so I lease quite a bit.
How are you guys able to turn a profit?
Because
it seems like a very expensive thing to get involved in.
It is a very low margin business. A lot of folks think that when they go buy the steak at the grocery store, that me as the rancher is making the profit, when in fact it's not at all. So I wanted to kind of take control of that process from start to finish. So now I raise the animal from the day it's born all the way to the day it's harvested. And we just opened a processing facility, so we'll be able to harvest, package, produce, and ship all of our beef. So we control the entire.
So how much does it cost to do all that?
Oh, well, that's a very broad answer. I guess, to build a facility in today's environment with inflation and cost, you're probably looking at like $350 to $400 a foot just for the processing facility.
Wow. Okay.
For cattle, an animal, by the time I take it from birth to finishing, their value is probably somewhere around $1,800 to $2,000. But my overall net margin in the time that I sell that animal is probably 15% if I'm lucky.
So you're getting like $200 per animal that you raise in profit?
Yes, sir. So when you figure time, it's a very unprofitable industry.
Yeah, it seems like that seems like almost minimum wage type. That seems pretty. That seems like you have to really love what you're doing to want to do this.
You do. You have to be passionate about it, and that's why I wanted to try to take more control of the distribution and the harvest side of it, because now I'm cutting out more and more of the third-party players to hopefully drive that margin up, where I can go to other producers, other ranchers, and say, "Hey guys, we've built market access for you to take your product, and now we can also help you generate a positive income."
And then you also have to factor in the cost of fertilizing the soil,
and
making sure that the cow's eating actual grass, because if you don't have fertile soil, you can't. I've started to set up a garden, and I'm horrible at it. I'm watering the plants consistently. Sure. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but things aren't really growing the way they should be. Right? I'm probably gonna have to pay somebody to just consult me to help me do it the first time or something, because I feel like sure. I'm just it's like an exercise of frustration. I've grown 5 okras and that's it. But I'm facing a challenge just trying to start a small garden in my house, right? So I can only imagine you having a ton of acreage, being able to like manage soil for like a multitude of cows, and that's how you make your living. Like that is a lot of work.
It is. Composting is a big part of our process because I don't use chemical fertilizer, and allowing the cattle to naturally manure that own soil and put the carbon back in, the potash, all the different ingredients in which are needed to drive growth. So it's quite a complex cycle.
That sounds very complex. That sounds extremely complex. How dangerous are cow farts and burps to the environment and the planet?
I would say a lot less dangerous than getting in my vehicle and trying to drive home. I've heard this over and over again. And the day they try to tax me for a cow fart, I would love to ask our dumbass politicians what we're going to charge them for the hot air that comes out of their mouth. So,
well, I don't even know that you can tax somebody. Like, how do you measure how much a cow's farted? Unless you start putting tracking devices on animals and start really biometrically measuring everything that everybody does to a T. And then by that point, you can't even afford to eat meat anymore because the margins will be non-existent, and the only people that will be able to afford to raise these types of animals are going to be large ag producers.
Yeah, and that's by design. They have threatened us with having to pay a carbon tax for manure releases. It actually releases less than one cow. I forgot the statistics. I think they said it was 10,000 head release less carbon emissions than two of the jets that Bill Gates owns. And so, there's something wrong with that equation. Hopefully people start questioning and understanding that.
But, he wants us to eat insects because he cares about you, Cole.
Absolutely. The day I'm having to eat grasshoppers and crickets for my nutritional value, I might as well be dead.
Well, it comes with a side of Prozac and other antidepressants.
Absolutely. We got to make sure we take care of the pharmaceutical companies while we're at it.
Well, I think that's what a lot of this green energy stuff is really designed for.
It is. And, we've worked through K&C Cattle and through the Beef Initiative. We worked with a lot of physicians that are now, providing data and research that shows so much of the misinformation in the food pyramid and the overall health of people and the absolute need of pharmaceuticals is nowhere near as high by just going back to a nutritionist type program where you're eating and mining your own protein.
I think that a lot of that is very true. I struggled with like a bunch of learning disabilities when I was younger, and I used to take I didn't take meds as like a kid, but they tried to prescribe all that shit to me.
Sure.
And the same people, quote unquote, that overly prescribed pharmaceutical meds to children, they're not the same people that think it's okay for drag queens to read to 4-year-olds, and they want kids taking hormone blockers. And you can just see right off the bat the players haven't changed. The only thing that's changed is they got to help big pharma make a large profit, and this is just a different way for them to do it because it's new.
Yeah, I mean, they've created these food deserts. You go into low economic areas, what are the first things you see? You see fast food chains, you see gas stations, and that's where people are getting their food sources from.
Yeah.
And you also look at the American male. Our testosterone levels have drastically dropped over the last 40 years, and we're seeing our kids at age 12 to 13 not even reaching their normal testosterone levels.
Well, and you have a big problem with most American adults couldn't pass a basic fitness test to go into the military.
That is.
But we're the world's number one power, and the dollar is the world's strongest currency, and our currency is backed by nothing other than military force. Meanwhile, more than half of our adult population is unable to pass a basic fitness test to join the military. You can see where there's a huge problem.
Absolutely.
Huge problem. Are we there yet where like the dollar's going to lose its dominant hegemony? We're probably a long ways away considering the mess that other countries are in. Right. Financially, fiscally, from a standpoint of being able to produce energy and also geographic proximity to one another. But if you're thinking that like we're going to be this all-powerful like imperialistic power for forever, like throughout our entire lifetimes, like you're delusional. If you're like looking deeply at what's the underlying problems that we're facing right now, unless it gets fixed immediately, and then if you try to like actually fix these problems in a real impactful way, you're a racist, you're a white supremacist, you're a homophobe because I don't know about you, but maybe like, not letting drag queens read to 5-year-olds is probably a good start to like not making things get worse.
Yeah. We hear that too because, with the way that they've driven prices, kind of the joke we've made is they're turning beef into caviar. And with the design of what we're trying to do is bring more affordable, healthier beef so that you no longer are having to supplement your nutrition with all these wonderful diabetic pills and, blood and heart medicines that the pharmaceutical companies have. Invest in better food. And by doing that, hopefully you're gonna better your own life.
Hey, how do you feel about protein shakes?
I think this
is totally not what I wanted to talk about. I'm just kind of randomly brought it up.
No, I know a lot of people like to do it that work out, but quite frankly, I think supplements can be of use, but if you will naturally eat more of your own consume protein directly from the source, you can get all the nutrients that are needed.
I think that's true, and I think that these supplements have also kind of arisen from the fact that the nutrition in our food has already been diluted.
Absolutely.
But even so, right? Like you could probably make a protein shake from like the milk of a cow or from the meat of a cow. Like you could probably still extract nutrients from like a cow to make a shake, and if you like combine that with like butter that you also make from the cow, or vegetables that you grow from like a garden, and you could put it into a concoction, and you want a quick source of nutrition after you did a strenuous activity but you're not hungry, like there's still a use for that type of stuff.
Oh, most definitely. And kind of going back, we designed the company so that hopefully we can provide affordable nutritious food to all, basically all demographics of all people, and that they can have that access. Along the lines of what you're saying, we have more and more people. We're doing education so that our customer base and future customers understand, like beef tallow, it is one of the best sources to cook with, and basically cut out seed oils, which are...
What is that?
Tallow?
Yeah.
It's the leaf fat, the kidney fat that comes off the carcass of a cow. It's natural fat that you can grease a pan with. That
really?
Hell, you can.
You got any extra you want to hook up so I can try it out?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love that. Yeah.
Take care of you.
That'd be great. I actually would love to cook that way, because we just get like cooking oil and stuff like that, and it's so bad. Or we get like Pam, and I'm like, I don't want to cook with that shit.
That's
and if I could just cook with like something like that, that would be amazing. Like that would probably do wonders for everything I'm doing, because I'm doing a lot, man. I got my podcast, I got pedicabbing, I'm trying to like work out and do jiu-jitsu when I can. I got my city council stuff. I have a lot that I'm doing. There's never I'm never able to rest right now, and that's fine. I'm not complaining like, oh, look how hard I'm working, like I deserve a bunch of shit, right? But I'm just lucky that I'm really passionate about a lot of the stuff I'm doing. A lot of what I'm doing is giving me a lot of fulfillment. When you find something that fulfills you, you never people say, oh, when you find what you love to do, you never work a day in your life. Like that's absolute bullshit, because when you find what you love to do, you never stop working.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So anything that could help me do that more optimally is something I'm always more open to.
Yeah, and it's like something as simple. You go and you pay $4 or $5 for a bunch of vegetable oil that is generated by seed oils and is a big part of our loss of testosterone and a lot of the health issues. You can buy tallow for $1 or $2, and it's otherwise a product that would be discarded off a carcass anyway. So we cook with it nonstop.
Yeah, hook it up, man. Let me get some tallow, you, bro. Let me do it.
Natural animal fat. Although we've been trained by the food pyramid that it was bad, come to find out is actually much healthier for you all along.
Yeah, another fun fact: the sugar industry paid a bunch of scientists at Harvard to conduct studies of that nature to get people to start eating sugar on a constant basis.
I'm glad you brought that up, so I didn't have to. But yes, that is true.
I saw the movie Food Inc., and then it's also kind of crazy how the sugar industry and tobacco industry and the pharmaceutical industry, how they don't like necessarily or like officially working together, but I mean these guys all go to the same country clubs.
Absolutely.
You don't think that if you're going to the same country club and you're going to the same dinner parties and your kids go to the same private schools and you attend the same fundraisers, you're not going to like work together to figure out how you can like collaborate on business ideas and how you can collaborate on making money and consolidating influence, and like, what do you know? eating fats and animal fats are really bad for you, and you should replace that with sugar. And also, the sugar that you've been consuming in mass is giving you diabetes and the other source and a whole other assortment of health problems. But don't worry, we got this cure for you if you take this whole cocktail of pharmaceutical medication. So boom, now everybody just
yeah, chase it down with your Doritos and Fruit Loops. You'll be great.
Yeah, like I said, have some Xanax with that, and you'll
right.
Yeah, so what's the problem?
Yeah, it is such a cluster, and we have so much of that going on in the beef industry right now. I mean, we have basically 4 conglomerates that monopolize the entire market, and they just got fined for they settled for they didn't admit guilt for price manipulation during COVID. But ironically, if you really back into the numbers, what it looked like is the relief money they gave the ranchers during COVID for rapid downturn in our market, they turned around and got that money back, but nobody is pleading any guilt for price manipulation. It's really a shitty situation.
Were they jacking up the prices?
No, what they were doing, well, they were jacking up the prices to you as the consumer, and then they were turning around and dropping the prices on the producer, on the cattle rancher. And so we were getting paid less money while they were making $1,000 a head margins. We were doing good.
So then why even do business with those people? Why not just go like farm to table?
Direct to consumer.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I started my company for, because I had enough. I'd been on the commercial side my entire life.
And then also when you give this to another company, aren't you like, you raise the cattle from like what, infancy to like adolescence, and then from adolescence to adulthood, this mega corporation is raising your cattle, and you have no idea what the hell they're doing to that. It's like, It's like taking your teenager and putting them in CPS and expect them to grow up like a normal, responsible adult after you've raised them for 12 years, right. And then CPS raised them for the next 6. It's like kind of this. It feels like it's kind of the same thing, right?
It is. It's just most producers don't have that market access or know how to be able to reach out and sell meat products. So they'd rather someone else take that burden off. They just want to raise the animal. So that's what we're trying to create, is a source to where we can help them move that product, and we no longer have to have those guys.
So let me ask a question. Do you buy meat from producers like once they hit that like middle threshold?
No.
Now you only you do from infancy till they're ready to be cooked? We're
raising our own, and we are working with some other producers. But by doing that, we have to be a part of the process from the day that the day that they're pulling the calves off the moms, to make sure they follow our shop protocols. All of our beef is free of antibiotics. It's free of hormones. And we will not let a calf in our program that does that or doesn't have our genetic lineage, because that's how we control consistency.
Because you don't know. Because somebody could also tell you something that might not be true. And It's like, oh, by the way, this cow is eating grain all the time, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff that goes on with the meat industry.
Absolutely.
A lot. You see Adam, I actually like almost went vegetarian because of this. And I know a lot of people go vegetarian because of this stuff.
Absolutely.
Because they'll go in and they'll see a processing plant where there's like 50 cattle next to each other.
Yep.
They're like covered in shit. You're eating the shit. The meat gets ground up, like you get cattle from like Brazil, Africa, America all together, like a milkshake of meat, which has a lot of problems.
Absolutely.
And so you learn that about the meat industry, and you're like, well, fuck this, I'm not eating meat anymore. And then now you have a nutrient deficiency.
Sure.
Unless you're like super on point about your diet, because there are some world-class vegan athletes that are amazing about their diet. Or you're like a fitness professional and you know how to like, still be really healthy while cutting out meat.
Sure.
And there are people like that. Or you're like, well, I'm going to go all organic, and then you learn about what organic food is, and organic food, it just basically means that like the animal that was factory farmed just ate an organic diet. Or had organic grain, or the people at the FDA are so corrupt that they can label anything organic if you just give them the right amount of money. And so then I just started saying, okay, well, certified humane, it has to be. If it's certified humane, it's probably good. You're probably getting rid of a lot of that crap if it's certified humane and it's like free range on a farm. And that's what me and my girlfriend have been doing pretty much since when we go to the grocery store.
Sure. That's where we encourage people. So much of the marketing that's out at the grocery stores is flawed. There are ways in which you can you can manipulate around the system with your marketing. So I encourage, and through the Beef Initiative, we encourage any consumer to go out, shake your rancher's hand, get to know the person, where your beef comes from, understand the process. And with that, you can rest assured and know that you're getting exactly what you're paying for and not going off some bullshit label in the grocery store.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And I did that digitally by reaching out to you.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
So that's, I'm doing my part. I saw the Texas Slim episode. I'm putting that into action.
Yes, sir.
I saw him on Pop. I was like, dude,
he is really preaching the message.
He's awesome.
Us.
Yeah, I love that guy. And he's right. And he's also looks super healthy for his age and whatnot too.
Yeah, man. He makes me kind of feel inferior. I mean, he is ripped. He's been working out like crazy, and he just eats good.
Yeah. Listen, just food for thought. We have cookouts, and we have have little cookouts, especially Saturday night if there's a big game or during ACL. You should bring some of that beef over to the shop and sell some of that beef at the shop, because people will go ham here, especially with all our ACL money, which is literally this weekend.
Right. Well, I can tell you our beef orders have tripled for the next 3 weeks. They have not stopped because of ACL.
Hell yeah.
We service a few local restaurants, and they have all put in significant orders. So we're excited for that.
That is amazing. We were talking about this earlier before we started rolling. I've noticed that a lot of farmers and conservationists and people who work in nature tend to have more right-leaning political views. But it's strange because the political left seems like they, at least in their speech, through verbiage, seem like they are the party of fighting climate change and taking care of the environment and, eating healthy and all of that stuff. So I was wondering, if you can clear that up, if what I'm saying is true, or why that happens to be the case.
Well, I think a lot of it is most farmers, ranchers, we tend to be, from a business standpoint, to be more conservative in nature. That doesn't necessarily mean your social ideals, but where the conflicting issue is amongst parties is so much of this go green propaganda that they're pushing is putting further and further, or more and more regulatory restrictions on the small producers, given the exemptions to the large corporate farms. And so therefore, middle class agriculture America, lower class agriculture America is kind of the point where this is absolute bullshit. Why would we side with these guys? Because all they're trying to tax us for carbon credits. They're basically trying to put us out of business. They keep the EPA constantly evaluating all of the procedures in which we do, and they turn around and turn a blind eye to so many of these big corporate companies. So it's driven that push to draw, a lot of the producers have kind of lean more right because of it.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense because, you can't really argue with a platitude of trying to make the environment better.
No.
Or trying to reduce a certain carbon emissions, or trying to eat healthy, or trying to take care of the environment and all that stuff, or protecting the water. You can't argue with that.
Right.
And they are really good about using those points to help their corporate buddies.
Yes.
Because like you said earlier, Tyson's Chicken doesn't have to apply the same regulatory standards that you do, because they have an army of lawyers and accountants that they can use to bypass that, and you don't. And so then if you're a small farmer and a small producer, you're going to want as little rules as possible, because the rules only affect you. They don't affect the big guy.
No, absolutely. And it's like I have this argument sometimes with or not argument, discussion with my wife. In practice, in theory, in agriculture, socialism would be like this perfect utopia where everyone gets along and works equally. You can't be in production agriculture and bust your ass in the sun all day long and do as much physical labor as we do and think that the guy that does sit on his butt should be able to get the same equal share for share value of his crop with little work. So therefore, socialism would not be beneficial. But, so many of us are capitalists at heart. And even there are times where we get frustrated with the far right, because if we are driven by capitalism, why are we allowing monopolies to start creeping into the agriculture sector, and we've got to get.
I don't
under
think the
control.
monopolies are far right, though. I think that a lot of people that are quote unquote on far right seem to be against monopolies, just like the Bernie Sanders type of people are. They just communicate about it differently. Like a lot of times, if you see somebody on like one end of the spectrum and the opposite end of the spectrum,
Right.
all you got to do is have them turn around, and they're literally the same.
Agreed.
I
think, and when I say that, I'm not necessarily pointing out the far right's wrong on this one. I think a lot of us get so frustrated because we want either side to have some type of representation, but more often than not, conservatives, the Republican side of the ledger, tends to give more back towards the smaller producers, the smaller farmers, and that's why they line up.
I think that makes sense too, because generally speaking, people from more rural areas vote Republican, and so like if your buddy was a rancher, so you get it a little more versus like if you're from some coastal city.
Right.
But then at the same time, you probably have Democrats who like grew up in ranching communities, and like what the problem is too. Maybe like a Democrat like from like East Texas that's like from a ranching community would actually represent you better than a Republican from that community. But Democrats in coastal cities have given those people such a bad name that nobody wants to listen to you if you have a D next to your name. So then those people just get shut out.
And that's true.
Does that make sense?
I don't know if you watch many videos, but I watched Michael Jordan's deal on Netflix, and it's like he said,
I saw that.
I sell shoes to both Democrats and Republicans. We feel the same way. We have customers on both sides of the aisle, but what is beautiful about what we do is each of them actually still have the same similar interest of minding their health, minding their protein, and understanding where it comes from. And by that, we can bring people together that can align and agree on something. They may not necessarily agree with all social ideas, but when it comes to their health and feeding their family, they do agree, and it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, like it feels like we're more divided than what we actually are. Yeah. But everybody can agree on food. Everybody wants to eat healthy food.
Yes.
Right? Everybody wants sound money in which your purchasing power isn't destroyed. Absolutely. Everybody wants financial freedom. And everybody should theoretically want to be able to freely express themselves without being judged or persecuted for it.
Absolutely.
I think that if you communicate along those terms, it's pretty difficult to make enemies. The only time that happens is if, A, you don't really believe those principles and you operate in bad faith, or B, you're just so good at communicating those principles that bad faith actors on the opposite side will accuse you of pushing a divisive message when you're not.
True.
But generally speaking, if you stay the course and you're consistent and you're unapologetically yourself and you don't let these people intimidate you, like that storm usually passes.
I agree. We've watched so much of that happen over the last 24 months that, and it's, it's been crazy. I've done some podcasts too with some folks that, we probably don't necessarily agree on everything at all levels on. I support Bitcoin. We sell beef for Bitcoin. We believe in financial sovereignty. And although they may not understand yet why we believe in Bitcoin, they believe in some type of financial sovereignty.
Yeah.
So we can find ways in which we come back.
1,000%. It is kind of odd, though, because like I've started to make like these connections with people who are like deep in the Republican Party in Texas and stuff. Sure. Because of all the videos, everything I'm doing. Right. But I am like extremely surprised and also a little horrified at how little they understand this asset and how unexposed they are. When the group of people that are like complaining the most about being canceled, the group of people that are generally seem to preach the loudest about free speech and personal autonomy don't have a sound investable asset that is literally designed to protect that. It sort of makes you question either A, their ethos, or B, their ability to actually protect those freedoms that they claim to value so much.
I think you're spot on.
Yeah.
I don't even have a comment back on that. I'm speechless. You're right.
So that's kind of like my take on all that stuff.
I agree.
Do you think Bitcoin mining is bad for the environment?
Well, I think it's. I don't.
I'm asking you this as somebody who's a rancher that works in nature and that deals with different outlying effects that affects the soil composition, what happens to the animal. You're probably more familiar with like how certain chemicals could affect what goes in the water and like what happens with the fish in the water. Like, you're a lot more well versed in nature than I am. Like, I'm some New York City kid. I know nothing. I'm asking you these questions because I'm hearing stuff on the news and I want to clarify things I got.
Yeah, in my opinion, no, it isn't, and here's why. It don't matter if you do wind or solar energy, you do wind energy. They all have a cost with environment. They're taking up real estate in which it can affect animals. Okay, so let's say you're mining Bitcoin and you're running electricity. Well, we got to have power on your grid to be able to function either way.
Yeah.
There's a give and take on all sides. Is it any worse than this one? No, I actually don't believe so. I think it is great that we're generating revenue from us for a sovereign currency. And I stand behind it 110%. It doesn't affect my cattle. It doesn't affect the way I do business. So,
do you mind where you are?
No, not right now.
If they open up, like, are there any environmental concerns from opening up a mining facility in the immediate location that you're in?
It's interesting. Tesla's my neighbor, so I mean, I guess then we'd get into a whole conversation comparing what solar and battery driven vehicles would look like compared to Bitcoin.
Because they're making the vehicles there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I that'd be probably a whole nother podcast.
I'm a big Bitcoin person, right? And I think that the way they mine Bitcoin with the proof of work is the only way that you can actually have personal freedom and autonomy. And this sound money that we have right now and censorship proof, like, purchasing power, I think that, like, if it wasn't for proof of work, none of that would happen. You would just get digital fiat. Agreed. Which is extremely dangerous. And I also think that if you have digital fiat and you have central bank digital currencies, eventually, like, authoritarian governments will just start having rates become super negative. Yep. And if you don't spend what you have within a certain amount of time, you have no access to those funds anymore. And rampant consumerism, last time I checked, is probably a lot worse for the environment than driving your car, cow farting, or mining Bitcoin.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So that's where I'm like, that's where when I, like, really start to, like, put my detective hat on, my thinking cap on, a lot of these, like, environmental narratives, it doesn't seem like it's really adding up. Like, it seems like they're like, you're not telling me something, or, like, you're deliberately suppressing information, or you're saying these, like, progressive platitudes because you got something, like, some other ulterior motive that, like, you're trying to push, but I can't really put my finger on what it is and say it out loud because then I sound like an insane conspiracy theorist. You know what I mean? So I think that all that stuff is good to talk through and figure out because, like, regardless of the political aisle you're on, everybody wants a clean environment, right? And so one of the most important ways to have a clean, good environment is to, like, understand the bullshit.
Absolutely.
So we can actually do it right.
Yeah, and I think too often so much of our food programs are not looked at. They're not discussed in media because it's not the sexy topic. They want to talk about fitness and of course all those big powerhouses in both pharmaceuticals and chemicals and all these other companies. They're controlling the narrative, and now it's time that people bring that narrative back and have open discussion. And when that happens, we're seeing more. I've had more vegans reach out to me this year that have actually moved back to animal protein because they understand where their food truly comes from. They're buying from a local producer, and by doing that, their body feels just as good, if not better, than it did.
Yeah.
And we've got to keep pushing that narrative so that people are cognizant of what it's made of.
And I was also reading about the fact that I read this when I was in college years ago, like 2006, 2007, that if people cut their meat consumption in half, they, like, the horrific stuff that you see in these factory farms wouldn't really need to occur because there'd be less demand for these animal products. And if there's less demand, there's less of a reason to put these animals in there like sardines. And that is probably true, but here's the other thing too, and it's that if I'm eating meat, like, farm to table through regenerative farming, I already am going to cut my meat consumption in half because I'm getting a better quality of beef with more nutritional value, and because there's more nutritional value, I don't need to eat as much.
It can be, but we've also seen the opposite, to where people can eat more beef, and by doing the regenerative platform, we can continue to provide the amount that's needed. Too many people are just glutton consuming, and they're overdoing it not just with protein, but they're overdoing it on carbs or saturated fats and sugars. So I think if people will get a healthier diet in the first place, we can produce all that's needed, and you won't necessarily need factory farming. We just need people to change their lifestyle.
Yeah. You definitely do. I think change the money, you change the lifestyle.
Amen, brother.
I really feel that way, because when you have money that can be printed up and conjured up out of thin air, it only benefits a certain very small group of people. Yep. It devalues currency. It creates debt spirals. It makes people have to work that much more to service that debt.
Agreed.
And then it creates a culture where our entire society is on a proverbial hamster wheel. When you're on a proverbial hamster wheel, you don't have the time to like culture your food and, you know, eat a proper, well-balanced, healthy diet, because that requires effort.
It does.
That requires a lot of effort, and you don't have enough energy to make that effort because you're on a hamster wheel. And I think that like our fiat consumeristic culture is contributing to a lot of that, and that's when people say, "Oh, Bitcoin's bad for the environment." I'm like, all right, maybe like mining does produce a lot of electricity, and that could be a problem. The environmental hazards that we precipitate or perpetuate through excessive money printing and running on a hamster wheel and rampant consumerism is, I guarantee, a lot worse for nature and the environment than mining a cryptocurrency with a 21 million coin fixed supply that gets harder and harder to mine every 4 years.
You're spot on.
Yeah.
On point. Man. On point.
All right. Anyway, we've tried to talk for close to an hour, right? So, a couple more things. How do you feel about that? Have you been paying attention to like the farmer protests in the Netherlands?
I have, and if America's not careful, we're going to have some of these same issues hit the United States. You know, the whole Midwest, along with Texas, we've been under a severe drought for really the last 6 to 12 months. With that, we have slaughtered a lot of our beef. You know, the hurricane is, for commercial producers, the hurricane did impact one of the largest fertilizer plants, shutting that gas off on the pipeline. All of these things can have a very drastic impact, and I think people should be prepared that there are going to continue to be some shortages. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's, as a producer, I see both sides of the aisle, and I can see what's going on.
Yeah, well, and if you're limiting the amount of nitrogen that can be produced in soil, and you're only selling compost and fertilizer that has a limited number of nitrogen, you make the price of that fertilizer more expensive. You make the food more expensive. Right. As a result, you create shortages and all types of problems. And you also squeeze out small farmers. And, you know, the party of working people shouldn't be the party of creating monopolies. Also, that doesn't work that way.
That's exactly right.
All right. Cole, how do we get a hold of you?
So you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our website at K&C Cattle, KANDCCATTLE.com. Check us out. We're located here in Austin, and we ship all over the country.
All right. Hey, Cole, thank you so much for coming on. Hey, wait, you got a Twitter? You got an Instagram? Like, let's get all your social media, get all that stuff out there. We got a website, everything. We got to do that before we... I
do have Twitter at K&C Cattle. Instagram, same, K&C Cattle.
All right. Hey, Cole, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it.